Look closely at how I'm gripping the rifle. Notice my thumb does not wrap around the grip. Why is this? Well, stick around to find out. Let me start by describing shooting from prone with a precision rifle. And throughout all of this, bear in mind, keep in mind, consistency equals accuracy. So on one end of the rifle, the far end of the rifle, we have a bipod. Now that bipod effectively connects the rifle to the ground. Yes, there may be a shooting mat in between that, but for all intents and purposes, that rifle is making contact with the ground through the bipod, and I will note a properly loaded bipod. Now that bipod actually acts like a fulcrum. The shooter in that prone position is also connected to the ground, so to speak, with the majority, as much as possible, of that body, my body, your body, connected to the ground. And we want to be as comfortable as possible. Now, that may sound like, oh gee, that's really nice, be comfortable. But it actually is quite important, because what we don't want to do is start having muscle fatigue. And when you feel muscle fatigue, you're going to respond to it. Some people will be so uncomfortable while they're shooting that they're just going to get it done. Let me shoot these rounds and get off the ground because this is not comfortable. Those sorts of things. However, if you're very comfortable, your muscles are not fatiguing, you're going to be able to shoot a very good group, or at least a much better group compared to if you were fatigued or uncomfortable. Now, the fact that the rifle's muzzle is probably about 9 inches off the ground, that means that the entire shooter's body cannot be flat to the ground. So oftentimes, and very normally, about the rib cage on up, the shoulders, that will be elevated off the ground. But if you use your forearms, place those as flat as possible on the ground, you'll be able to minimize that effect and still be very, very solid in your prone shooting position. Now my shoulder is going to make contact with the butt of that rifle. And what's going to happen then when I place that rifle's butt here in the pocket or in my shoulder right over here, it then is going to be elevated also off of the ground. So we're going to have that void, number of inches, between the bottom of the stock and the ground, or your shooting mat. So we need to fill that with something, and what we normally use is either a rear bag or a monopod. Now I actually used to use a monopod, used to use it quite a bit, but I started using a rear bag instead, and I prefer the rear bag. A couple of tips and tricks about that, and if you're interested, I'm happy to do a separate video on the rear bag. And if you'd like to have me do that, just pop some comment like that into the comments section. We'll see if we can put another video out specific to the rear bag. But I want to focus on that grip, on the trigger hand, on the firing hand. But before I talk about the firing hand, let me talk a little bit about the non-firing hand. For me, that's my left hand. And it plays a very important role also. What it is doing, this hand, is controlling the rifle. The placement of that rifle, it's helping me with my sight alignment. Very, very important role played by this non-firing hand. It's just not laying out there kind of casually. It is gripping that rear bag, helping me control where that rifle is going. Remember that fulcrum effect that we talked about? So the fulcrum out there, that's the bipod, And now this, on the opposite end, can certainly help and does affect that actual placement of the rifle and my sights. And now, the only thing that my firing hand is doing, or should be doing, is squeezing the trigger. That's it. We should not be controlling where the rifle is pointing using the firing hand, pushing the grip this way, that way, pulling it, pushing, whatever, lifting it. That is not what we want to be doing with that firing hand. So here is a little experiment. Now, you may not have a grip handy at your house right now, but you can certainly just do much of this with your hand, a fist, those sorts of things. So, if you don't have a grip, let me just walk through it this way. Go ahead and make a fist with your firing hand, and you're going to want to have that grip strong enough as if you are going to control that rifle. So you've got to have enough pressure on it to move it this way and that way. Okay? So I'm going to make a nice strong grip as if I'm going to be controlling that rifle. And then I want to extend that trigger finger, the index finger. And I'm going to keep this real strong grip going right over here. Then I'm going to try to place very, very light pressure on something, right? It would be the trigger. Very, very light pressure so I can really control it. A lot of dexterity necessary to squeeze that trigger rearward properly. Now, let's try it another way, where we are going to take the same grip, and I am not going to grip it very, very tight, not very tight at all. That thumb is still on this side, and here again is my trigger finger or my index finger. Now, again, I'm not gripping this real tight. I can place this hand out here, and I can touch upon it so lightly that I know from experience that I can have such control of that trigger to squeeze that last little bit out of a two-stage trigger and send the shot. Now, there are some folks who can do a full grip, as I'll call it, a full grip, and still have good dexterity. The key is not giving it the death grip. If you start controlling the rifle with this hand, you're not going to have the dexterity to get that nice trigger squeeze with the index finger. Now, the other problem with using a full grip on the rifle with your firing hand is that some folks, and this tends to be newer shooters or shooters who are particularly sensitive to recoil, this hand will anticipate the recoil. And just before the shot, you know it's coming, and you're gonna grip that. And what happens? It pulls back, and that fulcrum on the far side probably gonna dip. It's gonna move somewhere you don't want it to move. Now, the advantage, of course, is if you can shoot with a full grip and you're not controlling the rifle with it, but you just like your thumb on the opposite side, that's okay. But I still think people would shoot better this way. Okay, but that's all right. The advantage of it, though, is when you get off of the prone position and you want to shoot standing, you will probably need a little bit more control right here. And so that muscle memory that you're building by doing a full grip carries all the way through everything that you're going to do. That's the advantage of using a full grip. But I don't have any problem making the transition from prone shooting with what I call a precision grip and standing, etc., using what I'll call a full grip. Well, you might have some questions about what we just talked about. Pop those into the comments section, and thank you for watching.